So you came to London, you're at the Convergence Centre. Can you briefly describe the Convergence Centre?
Yes, the Convergence Centre was a 6-story building, totally abandoned for the last couple of years in the heart of London, a couple of blocks away from Piccadilly Circus, and surrounded by a ton of corporate offices and headquarters, and also some interesting sort of kind of neural point for the culture of the city as well, bringing a lot of musicians and a lot of activists together, and also addressing a lot of the social issues as well, like of housing, being actually pushed out of public spaces everywhere else. So in a way, it was to me, it was, and to many others, it was an oasis of sanity in the sea of consumption and destruction that rages around.
So can you tell us what happened actually on what you were doing in the space, and can you kind of lead us through what actually happened on that day?
Yes, I was helping out with a variety of different projects that were happening. Everything from maintenance to clean up to securing the place, doing safety watches as well on the rooftop and down below to keep the place safe and secure, and was also in the process of putting together like a reading corner. But since the place was so hectic in such a short time span, that was a little more difficult. And on the day of actions, when the raid happened, that was our first day of action. There was a lot of just energy the day before, and it was so kind of like the ultimate element of not just surprise, but an element of distraction, detraction from what was really powerful and what was happening on the outside.
So how did you find out about the raid? How did you feel it was happening? Where were you when it started?
Well, I was on the rooftop, and having done part of the watch, I was basically sleeping a little late, and I was actually sleeping in a structure that was right on top of the roof. It contained a water tank, and as I was waking up, a ladder dropped outside of the door of the space, and police started sliding down with lots of rocket, and there were yells and screams all throughout the roof. There were still a couple people left on the roof, basically police on the roof, and the ladder was actually outside of the door of the structure where I was in, so like my escape path was actually cut off, and I decided to just basically lay low and ascertain the situation for a while, and this turned into basically being there for 4 hours and being surrounded by police deploying on the roof and setting down ropes and bringing in riot gear police also from the structure next door. And it was really an insight of how this is done and what the dynamic of such a situation is, because I was having overheard the conversations, even knowing and having experienced this before, I was totally amazed by their witness. I was listening to conversations of how like seeing everything down below, how this is a good vantage point to shoot down the occupiers. Listening to them describing the ensuing smash and grab tactics that are usually used for basically, theft of like basically jewelry by criminals, and it really felt like it was a really high criminal operation using a lot of violence, so kind of a reversal of the paradigm, the paradigms that are used in mainstream media and mainstream society.
So did you feel the police were kind of revealing who they really were while you were sitting in this water tower?
Yes, and I also felt like instead of being like, being out there and doing something, instead I was in a sort of kind of like a sort of a more of an observer mode, because very often when demos we really have this strong instincts and impulse to just announce our presence, and it was really interesting for me to experience actually another side of this interaction as well.
So what happened then?
What happened then? I felt there was a megaphone that I had in that same structure, and I had this idea when I started hearing the sounds and a lot of violence going down, smashing down below. I had this idea of running across the rooftop, and there was a lower ledge, a floor down below, and with a scaffolding right next to it. So I thought I might as well run across the roof and jump down on the ledge below and then cross over to the scaffold and climb the scaffolding with a megaphone. Offer like alternative voice in the situation. And I had a limited vantage point from the shed I had. There was one hole on one side and a little crack in the wall, so I wasn't really aware of the total presence. They were actually right outside the door too. When I ran out, there were the police officers in riot gear were in this small enclosure that had railing system, not allowed by safety measures, I guess, to be close to the roof. But all around the roof were actually tactical teams with ropes already deployed and dropped down, and it was like basically every couple 2-3 meters there was one of them. So I just found the only part of the roof where there weren't there, and I just basically tried to sneak across in between the police and the ledge basically. And I found myself at one point hanging off to the chimney with a drop on one side. And then I made a run for it. And as I was running in between the tactical SWAT team officers, climbing gear, one of them reached out, and they were actually tied in with ropes, so they couldn't reach out too far and grab me. But one of them basically reached out and smacked me right in the face. And then grabbed me from behind, and at that point they started jumping on top of me and mashing my face into the roof, and pretty soon there was about 5-6 officers pretty much on top of me all around. And it was really fascinating that at that point, being so close to the edge, they were not concerned about any safety issues whatsoever, but their main concern was the location and the viewing point of a media camera on one of the surrounding roofs. And this is something that came up. There was one officer that kept reminding all the officers, and to a certain degree that might have saved me from even more injuries. And at the same time made me realize that how important it is to have media and witness presence in situations like this.
So you're in no way trying to commit suicide?
Oh no, not at all, not at all. I was seeking freedom, and I was running for basically just, escaping the situation.
So can you just tell us your plan again? So you're going to come out.
In matter of fact, it was not an intentional act to escape from the police, but it was also an act of feeling really in danger, realizing and feeling the dynamic that was happening, and a lot of people being, it was like a survival instinct more than anything else.
So can you just tell us again about coming out the tower? So just go through it again, just really step by step, and tell us your motivation at each stage.
The motivation was less of a motivation, like I said, and more of an instinct. Basically, it was just feeling totally enclosed and surrounded in lots of ways, and also feeling that so much was happening on the outside that I needed to be part of, and that I just couldn't lay low, and I just couldn't wait. I kept thinking those two options of just laying low till basically, it's all over, and escaping, maybe even waiting for nightfall. But at the same time, it was demos, it was everybody else, being besieged and attacked down below. And I felt like, it was a conscious act to divert a lot of the energy that was being used to basically attack and violate others, my comrades, to basically by putting myself out there. And so I was held down for like 45 minutes. I found myself in this big pool of blood, my face right next to it. And then I knew that something was happening when they were really concerned about washing my face. So it was also, once again, I was sort of kind of maintaining a certain image as I was about to be carried out. And what happened, they started pouring fizzy water on my face, but my face was actually held back at the same time, and they started pouring it up my nose. So it was like literally sort of kind of like a miniature waterboarding. Exactly. My passages were told there was water on my face, there was water in my nose. And then to clear my nasal passages, I started breathing into my nose, and there was so much blood. The blood started splattering on the police officers, and they were like, "Oh no!" It's like, well, at the same time, any type of freedom and freedom of expression is being assaulted. It's like, stain on their uniforms that's of their own making. It's once again one of the biggest concerns. And I was loaded on this, not a stretcher, but it's basically this all-encompassing plastic, not a stretcher, but really like a cocoon that's used for lowering people up and down, carried up onto the roof next door from which they came down. It was very surreal to be taken into an office setting and having experienced what I've experienced.
So on the video, you are struggling quite a lot as they're trying to drag you up and in this cocoon, in this kind of straitjacket almost. You're struggling a lot. What were you thinking then?
I was thinking that more officer, seeing how fucked up, for lack of any other words, how really, really fucked up it was what was happening. I have to basically do as much as I can to have as many people present so they can't actually be somewhere else and do even worse things to others.
Yeah, what happened after that?
They took me to the structure next door, which was also there, so kind of like a gathering point for the invasion from up above. And it was sort of kind of interesting to see how this corporate setting has been totally commandeered by the police department, and all the people that were actually usually working there were totally on the periphery in the staircases. All the police were utilizing the desks and the whole space. And I was really yelling and screaming. It was like catharsis of a lot of the issues that I felt. I felt that was really important to broadcast what has happened. And next I was put on an elevator, but when I was put on the elevator in this stretcher, it's possible to actually hold somebody vertically. It was sort of kind of like I felt like sort of like a mummy sarcophagus almost in effect. But they put me against the wall and they mashed my face, my head. This stretcher, I had no way of actually resisting this or protecting myself. All my hands were tied and my legs were tied around me, and they just mashed my face against it a couple times, and then they kept pressing. And I just remember as I was taken out, there was like this big blood smear and blood drip on the wall of the elevator itself. And then I was taken out and taken to the hospital and under with 2 police officers who were trying to be really nice and maintaining over and over that they were there to help. Which I think I've already heard that on the roof already once or twice. And that's the only time. So I felt like it was beyond sarcasm. I felt like it was an act of psychological warfare to actually say something like this after what has taken place. It's like being perpetrator of violence and then like trying to basically in double speak terms flip it and make you believe that imprisonment is freedom and violence is actually trying to help you. And I think they finally stopped saying that. The last time I remember them saying that, I just burst out in laughter. They said that they're there to help me.
So the media narrative was all about you committing suicide and the heroic police saving you, and how you were a mad person trying to jump off the building and the police were saving your life. Can you comment about that?
I think that's very convenient. That it also shows how the mainstream media works hand in hand with the police, and it totally ignores the fact that there was no violence involved from the protesters. There was no plan of violent defense of the building. There was, the token, the convergence space was of creativity, of music, of creative actions, of bettering the society, of more or less being canary in the gold mine of ideas, if you will. And I think it's also very, very convenient because it also discredits us as activists as being the cycles that are on the edge of society out there, with the police being the good guys, saving not just us, but also the whole society as a whole from a peril. And it's also very symbolic of peaceful protesters from Funa bombs to critical mass to Occupy being classified as terrorist groups and having really disproportionate military tactics used against them. And in effect, by stating what they stated, they totally ignored that dynamic and that reality. So it's something very superficial, something, once again, with some very double-speak flipping of.
Can you tell us about your injuries? I see you're still bleeding.
Yeah, my bleeding just won't stop. It just continues. It has continued for the last day and a half. And I feel sore all over. I have bruises on my elbows, my knees, and I just feel very weird. But at the same time, I feel very energized. I feel like it's clear, what's really happening, what's taking place out there.